Have you ever wondered what happens when global superpowers lose influence? Not through war, but through economics? In this video, we're diving into 7 countries now, choosing Canada over the US after Trump's new tariffs. And what's unfolding is more shocking than most people realize. Trump's bold new tariff policies were meant to protect American industries, but they've triggered something unexpected, a growing global pivot toward Canada. Countries that once depended on the US are now quietly shifting their loyalty, trade, and strategy northward. Stay till the end, because number one isn't just a close US ally, it's rethinking everything, and it might surprise you the most. Number 7. Germany's industrial might has long relied on frictionless trade with North America. But when Trump's 2025 steel and aluminum tariffs imposed 15% and 25% duties, German exporters scrambled for alternatives. In 2024, trade with the US fell by 12%, while Canadian trade jumped 8%, hitting 25 billion Canadian dollars. Automotive giants like BMW and Mercedes rerouted parts through Ontario, avoiding punitive fees while keeping their North American plants humming. This nearshoring strategy protected margins and over 50,000 German jobs. Germany's renewable sector wasn't left out. Provinces like Ontario and Quebec committed over 1.2 billion Canadian dollars to German-made wind turbines and solar arrays, boosting investment by 20% year over year. Precision firms found Canadian buyers willing to pay a premium rather than wrestle with US tariffs. By late 2024, Berlin was all in. Trade delegations redirected to Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Germany's economics minister called Canada a pillar of stability in a G7 speech. Expect major R&D investments to pour into Waterloo and Vancouver, as Germany and Canada embrace a new era of co-innovation. Number 6. India, the world's fastest-growing major economy, felt the sting of Trump's tariffs on machinery, electronics, and textiles. By September 2024, that exports to the US dropped by 7%, while shipments to Canada surged 15%, reaching $11 billion US dollars. Textile hubs like Tirupur and Surat inked deals with Ontario retailers, sidestepping unpredictable US duties. Pharma giants in Hyderabad and Mumbai rerouted generic drugs through Toronto's life sciences corridor, benefiting from Canada's stable pricing and IP protections. Meanwhile, Indian tech titans, Tata, Infosys, expanded in Canadian tech parks, attracted by liberal data laws and an existing India-Canada trade deal. Diplomatically, India's tone toward Ottawa warmed. In December 2024, India's external affairs minister called Canada indispensable and announced fast-track visas for professionals. Canadian universities reported a 20% surge in Indian applications in early 2025. With inflation and employment pressures back home, Canada is now India's tariff-free gateway to North America. Look for Tata, Reliance, and others to open manufacturing hubs across Canada by mid-2025. Number 5. Mexico, long tethered to the U.S. economy, faced a wake-up call. Trump's 2025 tariffs on agriculture and autos added up to 15% in duties. Suddenly, U.S. purchases of Mexican goods dipped 10%, but Canada stepped in. Imports of Mexican produce and spirits climbed 12%, topping 20 billion US dollars. Growers in Michoacán and Jalisco found new lifelines in Loblaw and Metro. Automotive suppliers in Puebla and Guanajuato began near-sourcing in Windsor and St. Catharines, keeping production tariff-free under NAFTA Plus. 3 billion Canadian dollars in auto parts moved this way in 2024, up from 1.8 billion the year before. Even tourism adjusted. Flights between Mexico City and Toronto jumped 25%, with packages tailored for Canadian travelers. Politically, Mexico joined Canada in expanding NAFTA Plus, targeting agriculture, tech, and digital trade. Mexico isn't turning its back on the U.S. It's simply hedging its bets, and Canada is now a critical partner. Number 4. South Korea. South Korea's tech exports, semiconductors, smartphones, EV components, were hit by Trump's 15% tariffs. In response, giants like Samsung and LG fast-tracked their Canadian presence. Samsung broke ground on a 4 billion Canadian dollar chip facility near Ottawa, creating 1,500 jobs by 2026. LG pledged 2 billion Canadian dollars for an EV battery plant in Nova Scotia. Canada's trade pact with South Korea, CETA, offered duty-free certainty. Early in 2025, the Maple Soul Corridor launched, linking trade expos from Toronto to Busan. Korean firms gained access to Canada's critical minerals, while Canadian sectors embraced Korean 5G and AI. Diplomatic ties deepened. A strategic partnership MOU now covers cybersecurity, AI, and joint defense. Canada's BlackBerry QNX now powers Korean autonomous vehicles. Korean drones undergo Arctic trials in Nunavut. Expect more R&D labs, green tech incubators, and cross-border funds in 2025, as this high-tech alliance grows beyond tariff traps. Number 3. Netherlands. The Netherlands, Europe's logistics hub, was blindsided by Trump's 20% tariffs on cheese, dairy, and floriculture. By late 2024, Dutch exporters rerouted 30% of shipments to Canada, worth 1.5 billion Canadian dollars. Canadian wholesalers quickly increased imports of Gouda and Edam, meeting demand for premium European dairy. Dutch greenhouse innovators partnered with Ontario growers, establishing smart farms in Leamington and Niagara. A 500 million Canadian dollar fund now backs high-tech greenhouses, powered by Dutch LED tech. Canada's flower auction in New Westminster now hosts a Dutch-Canadian exchange, keeping tulips, orchids, and chrysanthemums in bloom coast to coast. Ottawa upgraded the Dutch Embassy Trade Office to headquarters status, and Dutch experts now advise Canada's Agriculture Committee. With U.S. trade policy swinging wildly, the Netherlands sees Canada as a stable, reliable, and strategic partner. Number 2. Brazil. When Trump's 2025 tariffs slammed Brazil's agro-industrial and steel sectors with up to 18% duties, the South American giant didn't flinch. Instead, Brazil pivoted, and fast. By the end of 2024, shipments to Canada surged by 14%, climbing to over $8 billion USD. Industry leaders like JBS and BRF now account for nearly 20% of Canada's processed meat market. And that's just the start. Brazilian steelmakers, once sidelined by the U.S., found new lifelines in Canada's pipeline boom. They secured over 2 billion Canadian dollars in contracts with Alberta's energy firms, supplying materials for oil sands and LNG infrastructure. Meanwhile, ethanol producers, locked out of American markets, struck gold in Manitoba. The province's ethanol blending mandate opened the door for Brazilian sugarcane ethanol, which now makes up 10% of local gasoline blends. This game-changing shift was backed by a 300 million Canadian dollar Brazil-Canada Renewable Energy Fund, launched in late 2024. Governors from São Paulo and Alberta even hosted biofuel summits promoting joint research and cross-border production. A bold act of subnational diplomacy rarely seen. And there's more. Brazil's military logistics teams teamed up with Canada's Department of National Defense, conducting joint exercises from the Amazon to the Arctic. These maneuvers tested interoperability in the world's most extreme terrains. On the world stage, from the G20 to UN peacekeeping coalitions, Brazil has begun openly supporting Canadian leadership, marking a quiet but powerful shift in global alignment. Brazil no longer sees Canada as a fallback, but as a strategic, reliable, and equal partner. One that offers predictable trade, mutual respect, and a shared vision for the future. Number 1. France. And finally, France. Perhaps the most unexpected transformation of all. When Trump's 2025 tariffs hit French steel, aerospace parts, and even premium wines with up to 25% duties, Paris didn't retaliate. It realigned. By the close of 2024, French exports to the U.S. had fallen 14%. But trade with Canada? It soared by 18%, surpassing 22 billion Canadian dollars. Luxury names like Chateau Margaux and Veuve Clicquot rerouted 30% of their North American wine exports through Montreal and Vancouver, tapping into Canada's thriving wine market, with no trade barriers in sight. In aerospace, Airbus components and Dassault spare parts found eager buyers among Canadian carriers and service hubs, with over 1.5 billion Canadian dollars in imports logged in 2024, a 22% year-over-year increase. And let's not forget the runway of luxury fashion. From Holt Renfrew to Sephora Canada, French high-end brands saw a 20% spike in retail deals, softening the blow from lost U.S. revenues. But this shift wasn't just economic. In late 2024, France and Canada amended their strategic partnership agreement, adding a tariff mitigation clause that guarantees rapid dispute resolution, a landmark decision in the face of American unpredictability. France's economy minister called Canada a dependable market in turbulent times at a joint press conference in Paris. Since then, French trade missions have been flowing into Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. Simultaneously, Canadian diplomats are making their mark in France, promoting maple syrup, pulses, and canola oil as premium imports for European markets. Looking ahead, 2025 will see the launch of Venatable Agritech labs in British Columbia's Okanagan Valley, joint aerospace R&D centers in Montreal, and even luxury co-manufacturing studios in Toronto's Fashion District. France has chosen Canada not just as an alternate port of call, but as its #1 North American partner. In an age of trade realignment, this isn't just strategy, it's shared history renewed. Trade wars may seem like battles fought in boardrooms, but they determine who thrives and who fades. Today, we saw 7 nations turning to Canada in 2025, not out of necessity, but out of strategy, trust, and foresight. If this behind-the-scenes shift surprised you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We bring you these deep dives every week. Which country's pivot shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay hopeful.